Hey guys, welcome back to this channel. In this video, I will be answering the question, can a cold case be opened even after 50+ years if some evidence was discovered? If you have related questions, you can place them in the comment section, and you never know. Your question might be the next one we will answer. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and give this video a thumbs up. The first thing we will be looking at here is, what is cold case? The term cold case refers to any criminal investigation by law enforcement that has not been resolved after, typically, at least 1 year. There are several potential causes for a case to go cold, such as the inability to effectively evaluate the evidence using the available technology, hostile or unwilling witnesses, time constraints, a high caseload for the detectives assigned to the case, or a lack of worthwhile leads. Nearly every police department in the United States and the world has unsolved cold cases sitting on its records. However, because of agencies' workforce and resource constraints, typically only the worst cold cases, such as violent crimes, are reopened. Moreover, homicides and sexual assaults, which typically result in the most evidence, make excellent candidates for cold case reviews. The age of the crime, the amount and condition of the inventory, including physical evidence, pertinent to the case, the whereabouts of previously identified suspects, and new technologies and tools that may help to determine evidence previously unable to be solved all play a role in the decision to reopen a cold case. In many instances, cases are evaluated and prioritized based on the possibility that they will be solved. Those with newly available witnesses, information, and evidence that can now identify suspects are priority. Due to the extensive amount of detective notes, patrol reports, photographs, crime scene drawings and diagrams, electronic information, laboratory documents, and suspect information that must be reviewed, only the most talented and experienced law enforcement investigators are typically given cold case assignments. Strong communication and interpersonal skills, research and logical reasoning prowess, inventiveness, patience, and enthusiasm are all necessary for members of cold crime. Next, we will be looking at the characteristics of a cold case. The majority of the time, violent crimes like rape and murder are at the heart of cold cases. A statute of limitations normally does not apply to a cold case because of the nature of the crime being investigated. A disappearance or missing person case, like that of Natalie Holloway or other high-profile instances, can be called a cold case if the victim has not been seen or heard from for an extended period of time. A case considered cold when it has been closed and then reopened because of fresh evidence that rules out the initial suspects. Miscarriages of justice are the most common cause of this kind of outcome, yet it happens all too frequently. In some instances of cold cases, the evidence of the crime is uncovered long after the fact, as is often the case when skeletal remains are recovered. Other characteristics are mysterious, violent crimes for which evidence is deliberately hidden, or serial killers who move about and pose a new threat to the community are examples of cold cases. Cold case perpetrators may also be unidentified people who lack identifying documents. Difficulty identifying a suspect. Unsolved cases remain thus until a suspect has been found, charged with the crime, and brought to trial. If a trial ends without a conviction, the case can still be recorded in case additional evidence emerges at a later date. Early identification of a suspect or person of interest or subject is not always followed by the discovery of evidence directly attributable to that suspect, and subjects are not always forthcoming with confessions. This frequently occurs when there is no forensic evidence available, or when the suspect has an alibi supported by credible witnesses. Ultimately, the suspect's alibi will be exposed, the witnesses will change their stories, or new forensics technology will aid in their conviction. Even if a case is never solved, forensic evidence might reveal whether or not the crimes were committed in a pattern. Time. Time is another defining feature of cold cases. This is especially true for crimes that happened decades or even centuries ago, before modern technology made it possible to quickly and easily identify a sex offender or track down the original suspect. Some cold cases are never solved, despite requests for reviews from victims' relatives to check on the status of investigations into unsolved homicides and other crime. Murders and rapes are two examples of significant felonies that frequently go unsolved, and do not have a statute of limitations like other types of lesser crimes that may never be brought to light. Cases where the victim has gone missing and no one has seen or heard from them in a long time are also known as cold cases, such as Natalie Holloway's and the disappearance of the Beaumont children. Around 1/3 are not truly cold cases. When additional evidence discrediting the initial suspect is found, a seemingly closed case might go cold very quickly. When evidence of a crime is uncovered years after the occurrence, such as human remains, the case is considered cold. When fresh evidence causes a case that was previously classed as an accident or suicide to be reclassified as murder, the case enters the category of a cold case. Tunnel vision. Sometimes a plausible suspect is missed or ignored because of insufficient evidence at the time, the involvement of a likelier suspect, or the natural inclination of investigators to focus on one person to the exclusion of all others. This is related to the likelier suspect angle and is known as tunnel vision. What makes a case go cold? Until a culprit has been identified, charged, and tried for a crime, the case is considered open, unsolved, or cold. Any investigation that does not result in an arrest or conviction can be classified as cold and maintained on file until new evidence is presented. Crimes are rarely solved, but forensics and DNA evidence can show if the perpetrator or perpetrators are engaging in a pattern of serial offending. Insufficient evidence, the presence of a copycat or likelier suspect, or the inclination of investigators to hone in on one suspect while ignoring all others, might lead to the overlooking or outright dismissal of a credible suspect. New forensic evidence, a new perspective on existing evidence, or the introduction of circumstantial evidence are all ways in which a cold case can be reconsidered. There may also be alibi witnesses present who either confirm or refute the initial versions of events, or new suspects who were overlooked at first. These are examples of cold cases. The body on Somerton Beach. A body was discovered on Somerton Beach near Adelaide, Australia, in December 1948. The dead man was a well-dressed gentleman whose head was resting against the wall. Authorities initially suspected heart failure or poisoning, but the autopsy turned up no evidence of either. The Iceman. The Iceman, or Tsetse, is the natural mummy of a man who lived in the Alpine region between 3,400 and 3,100 BCE. In September 1991, the mummy was discovered in the Tstal Mountains. Even after 10 years had passed since the body had been found, the cause of death was still a mystery. It is currently thought that Tsetse died of loss after being shot with an arrow that lodged near his lung and destroyed his scapula, thereby damaging nerves and blood vessels. Françoise de Choiseul-Praslin. French Duchess Françoise de Choiseul-Praslin was beaten and stabbed to death at the family's Paris apartment on August 17, 1847. Her spouse was arrested, but he took his own life while on trial despite maintaining his innocence. There has never been any additional suspected party found. The scandal surrounding the case had a role in setting the stage for the 1848 French Revolution. Sakamoto Ryoma. Not long before the Meiji Restoration, a 31-year-old samurai named Sakamoto Ryoma played a pivotal role in the uprising against the Tokugawa shogunate. He was murdered at the Miya Inn in Kyoto. On the evening of December 10, 1867, a group of assassins waited outside the inn, and one of them pretended to be a random visitor before knocking, and former sumo wrestler, who now serves as bodyguard and manservant to Ryoma, answered the door and said he would check with his master to see if he was taking calls at that time. The door guest took his sword and sliced the bodyguard in the back when the guard turned his back, killing him. Now to finally answer the question. Can a cold case be opened even after 50-plus years if some evidence was discovered? A cold case can be reopened even if it has been dormant for a long time, if new evidence is found that could change the outcome of the case, and authorities still believe it can be solved. However, it is important to note that as time passes, witnesses and suspects may pass away or even become inaccessible, so reopening a cold case may not be possible in all cases. This is the end of this video. Make sure to give this diode a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Drop your comment in the comment section below.